The sun rested low upon the horizon, painting the village of Ogioma in shades of gold and copper. Beyond the tall palms and whispering reeds, the river Ijale shimmered as if alive, its surface rippling though no wind passed. The elders often said, "The river breathes because it remembers." And truly, it seemed to sigh each evening, its voice a song of both sorrow and warning. They said the water could listen, that it carried the memories of those who once walked upon its banks. Children were told never to swim at dusk, for that was when the spirits awakened, rising from the depths to whisper forgotten names. One old woman, Mama Ifeoma, sat near the river's edge, her voice trembling like the reeds as she told the children, "When the sun bends low and your shadow kisses the water, run home. For the river does not call twice." The children nodded, clutching each other's hands, their wide eyes reflecting both fear and wonder. Yet even as they ran, they looked back, for the river glowed faintly, as though it truly breathed beneath the sky. And so, life in Ogioma began each day with reverence. The villagers greeted the dawn not with haste, but with prayer, for they knew they lived between the seen and the unseen. Morning in Ogioma carried its own rhythm, a heartbeat made of drums, laughter, and earth. Women bent over mortars, pounding yam to a steady beat, while the smell of roasted maize drifted through the air. The men worked in the red fields, their hoes striking the soil with a rhythm that echoed the village drums in the distance. Children chased each other past huts roofed with palm leaves, their bare feet drumming against the ground in a dance of joy. From every corner came sound, goats bleating, firewood cracking, and someone's laughter mixing with the hum of a talking drum. In this village, every action was a prayer. They gave thanks before eating, bowed before elders, and left offerings by the great Iroko tree. But among all laws, one stood tallest: never disturb the forbidden waters. The elders repeated it often: the spirits protect us when we respect their dwelling, but they turn away when pride leads us too close. As the drums continued, the river glistened quietly in the distance, breathing, listening, and remembering. It waited, patient as time itself, for the day a heart would be bold enough to cross its silence. The river had many stories, but none whispered louder than the name Adana. She was the girl people claimed the river itself had given to the world. Her beauty was the kind that made the sun pause above her head and the wind soften its voice when she walked by. Her skin carried the color of warm clay after rain, and when she moved, it was as if water itself followed her rhythm, calm, steady, and untouchable. No one knew where she came from. Some said a fisherman found her years ago, sleeping on the riverbank after a great flood. Others swore they saw her rise from the water like mist at dawn. Whatever the truth, the village learned to speak her name with both admiration and fear. At night, old women would whisper by the fire, "She came with the river, my child. The water gave her, and one day it may take her back." Yet Adana never spoke of her past. She lived quietly in a small hut near the river's edge, weaving baskets, singing softly to herself. Sometimes children would pass by and stop, listening to her songs, old melodies in no known tongue. And as the river breathed behind her, its ripples seemed to echo her voice, as though answering an ancient call. Still, beneath her grace there was a silence too deep, a loneliness that wrapped around her like the morning mist. The elders felt it, though they never said it aloud. For in Ogioma, even silence had power, and Adana's silence was the kind that carried secrets. Morning light spilled across the market square, turning baskets of peppers, yams, and dried fish into mosaics of color. Drums played somewhere in the distance, blending with laughter, bargaining, and the hum of daily life. At the far corner sat Adana's stall, simple, yet impossible to miss. She sold fish caught from the river, and baskets woven so finely that elders said they could hold even the wind. Men lingered nearby, pretending to bargain, though their eyes told another story. Her calm unsettled them. Her stillness drew them in. "Adana," one man said with a nervous smile, "how is it that your fish stay fresh even in this heat?" She looked up slowly, her dark eyes reflecting the sun. "Because the river does not forget its own," she answered softly. The man laughed uncertainly, stepping back as though her words carried weight he couldn't measure. Then came the moment that silenced the market. A young boy, no older than 7, approached her stall. He leaned over the bowl of water beside her fish and froze. "Look," he shouted, pointing with trembling fingers. Her reflection, "It moves." The crowd turned. The surface of the bowl shimmered, though the air was still. Adana's reflection rippled gently, not like water stirred by wind, but like something alive beneath it. A murmur spread. Some gasped and crossed themselves. Others whispered in fear. "She is touched by the spirits," one woman said. "No," another hissed. "She is one." Adana's gaze lowered. For a brief moment, her face held something, sorrow or maybe defiance, before she spoke in a voice calm as flowing water. "Do not fear what you do not understand," she said. "The river gives life to all, even to those who fear its depths." But her words did not calm them. The crowd dispersed slowly, glancing back at her as though she had become both sacred and forbidden. From that day, the market carried 2 stories, one of a girl blessed by the river's grace and another of a spirit in human form. And though no one dared to speak against her openly, the whispers grew like vines in the dark, twisting, spreading, waiting for the truth to rise, just like the river after rain. The great baobab tree stood in the center of Ogioma like an ancient guardian, its roots twisting deep into the earth, its branches reaching for the heavens. Beneath it, the elders gathered as they had for generations, forming a circle lit by flickering oil lamps. The air was heavy with the scent of burning palm leaves and the unspoken fear that had begun to spread through the village. Elder Namdi, whose beard was white as river foam, leaned on his staff and spoke in a voice that trembled with both wisdom and warning. "My fathers and my sons," he said slowly, "something walks among us that does not belong to this world. Her beauty blinds the eyes of men, but the river has eyes that never close. I have seen that girl, Adana, and in her eyes I saw the shine of Ikenwa's children." The elders murmured, their voices rising like wind before a storm. "We must not speak such words carelessly," said Elder Ifeoma, her bangles clinking as she raised her hand. "The spirits hear and they remember." "Then let them remember," Namdi replied, striking his staff against the ground. "If she is a spirit, she must be known. No secret should walk freely in the land of the living." A few nodded, uneasy. Others exchanged glances, their fear warring with reason. "Perhaps she is only different," one whispered. "Perhaps she is cursed," another answered. Silence fell again. The baobab creaked softly, as if the ancestors themselves shifted within its bark. Finally, Elder Namdi spoke once more. "Tomorrow, when the sun dies behind the hills, we will test her. If she is of this world, she will stand unharmed. But if she carries the mark of the river, the spirits will show us." The elders bowed their heads in agreement, though none spoke further. Above them, the wind rustled through the tree, whispering the same truth that no one wished to hear, that fear, once born, never sleeps. As the sun melted into the horizon, Adana walked toward the river alone. The air shimmered with orange and gold, and the soft hum of crickets filled the dusk. She carried a basket on her head and hummed a tune so ancient that even the trees seemed to lean closer to listen. Her song was not loud, but it carried far, a song of sorrow, of something lost beneath the waters long ago. An old fisherman, crouched behind the reeds, watched her with wide eyes. His heart thudded like a drum as she stepped barefoot into the shallows. The river greeted her like an old friend. "Adana," it seemed to whisper. "You have come again." She smiled faintly, her reflection rippling beneath her feet. And for a brief moment, as the fisherman swore till his dying day, something golden shimmered beneath her skin, like scales flashing under the dying sun. He stumbled back, crossing himself with trembling hands. But when he looked again, she was gone. Only her song floated through the mist. That night, he told his story to anyone who would listen. Most laughed nervously, brushing it aside. Yet, in the silence that followed, every heart carried the same question. What if it was true? From that evening on, no one spoke to Adana after dusk. Still, she walked to the river every night, singing softly, as if speaking to something that only she could see. The moon hung full and white above the village like the eye of a god. The world slept, all but Adana. She sat before her small hut, brushing her long hair in silence, when the grass beside her stirred. From the darkness, a serpent glided across the path, its scales gleaming silver in the moonlight. It paused before her door, coiled once, and then vanished into the tall grass without a sound. A soft wind blew, carrying the scent of river water. Adana's hand froze. She whispered into the night, her voice trembling. Mother of waters. Is this your warning or your comfort? The only answer was the whisper of the reeds and the slow pulse of the river beyond. By morning, the village was alive with fear. Word spread that a serpent, the symbol of Ekinwa, had come to Adana's doorstep. It is a sign, Elder Nnamdi declared. The gods have spoken. Either she is under their protection or under their curse. No one dared to approach her hut. Even those who once smiled at her now crossed the road to avoid her shadow. And yet when she walked through the village, her face remained calm, her eyes clear. That night, the narrator's voice falls low, like a drumbeat fading into silence. And so the village of Ogioma slept under the breath of the river, never knowing that the spirit they feared had already chosen a heart to love. The wind carried her song once more. Soft, haunting, and full of secrets the river would never tell. The forge roared like a living beast, sparks flying into the afternoon heat. Obinna, the blacksmith's son, hammered a glowing blade, his muscles glistening with sweat. He was known across Ogioma for his strength and honesty, a man whose heart, they said, was as steady as his anvil. Yet that day, his spirit would know a tremor unlike any before. When the sun hung high, Obinna slung a basket of metal wares across his shoulder and walked toward the market. The air was thick with the smell of roasted yam and fresh palm oil. Drums beat in the distance, blending with the chatter of traders. Then, through the noise, he saw her. She stood by a small stall near the river's edge, arranging fish with hands that shimmered as though kissed by water. Her skin caught the light like a river at sunrise. Her calmness drew him in, a stillness so deep it silenced the world around her. For a heartbeat, all sound faded. When their eyes met, the earth seemed to pause. Her smile was soft yet cold, the kind that warms no heart but stirs every soul. A breeze passed through the market, rustling the leaves above. The old storyteller's voice rose in the distance, as if time itself spoke through him. Even the boldest man forgets caution when the river smiles at him. Obinna blinked, and the market returned. Voices, colors, life. But within him, something had already changed. That evening, as the sun sank into the forest, Obinna could not rest. The image of the girl by the river haunted him. Her face, calm yet sorrowful, lingered in his thoughts. The next day, he returned to the market under the guise of trade. But his eyes searched for only one thing. When he found her, she was cleaning fish, her song low and haunting. Like a whisper from beneath the water, he greeted her. "Good day, maiden of the river." Adana looked up slowly, her tone gentle. The river has no maidens, only stories. Her words sent a chill through him. Yet he smiled. "Then may I be part of that story?" She didn't answer, only lowered her eyes and continued her work. Later he asked about her among the market women. Their laughter faded quickly when they realized whom he meant. One crossed herself. Another whispered, "She came with the flood. No father, no mother. The river gave her, and the river may take her back." The oldest woman, her eyes clouded with age, leaned close and hissed, "The river's child does not belong to any man." Still, Obinna's heart refused to listen. He began to stop by every day, offering roasted yam, carved bracelets, and flowers fresh from the forest. Adana accepted them in silence, though her eyes spoke what her lips dared not say. Inside her, warmth battled with fear. She had felt affection before, but never like this. Never from a man brave enough to face the river's whisper. Love, in its quiet way, had begun to stir between them. But it was not the kind that grows in sunlight. It was love that thrived in shadow, where truth and mystery twine like vines. Soon, the village began to talk. The whispers spread faster than Harmattan wind. "Obina courts a spirit," one woman murmured. "A spirit that walks like a woman," another added, clutching her charm. Even the men, bold in daylight, crossed themselves when they passed her stall. They laughed too loudly when they spoke her name, the laughter of fear disguised as mockery. When word reached his father, the old blacksmith slammed his hammer down and turned to his son. "Have you lost your senses, boy?" he barked. "No good comes from a woman the river protects." Obina wiped the sweat from his brow, defiant. "Father, she is no curse. She is only misunderstood. You taught me to see beyond iron and fire. Why can't you see beyond fear?" The old man's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. "There are things a man must not question. The river gives, but it also takes. Do not make yourself its offering." But Obina, young and proud, could not turn away. His heart had already been claimed, not by a woman, but by the mystery that lived within her eyes. The storyteller's voice would later say, "Tradition guards the soul, but love tempts the spirit. And when a man chooses love over wisdom, even the gods hold their breath." That night, as Obina walked home, the wind carried the faint echo of Adana's song, sad, beautiful, and ancient. It followed him like a promise, or a warning. The sun melted into gold as it slipped behind the hills, leaving the river to shimmer like a long silver snake. Crickets began their evening song, and the palm trees swayed lazily as if whispering secrets to the night. Obina walked toward the riverbank, his steps slow but certain, his hands carrying small treasures wrapped in cloth. He found her there, as always, Adana, her feet half buried in sand, her eyes reflecting the dying light. She looked as though the river itself had shaped her, calm on the surface, yet hiding deep, restless currents beneath. "I brought something for you," Obina said softly, his voice carrying over the water. From his bundle he revealed a bracelet of iron he had forged himself, dark and shining, strong yet smooth. Adana hesitated. "Obina, you should not give me such things. Iron burns what it does not understand." He smiled faintly, slipping the bracelet toward her. "Then let it learn. A gift from my world to yours." She accepted it, her fingers trembling as the metal touched her skin. For a moment the air felt heavy. The river rippled though there was no wind, and a lone bird fell silent mid-song. But then, Adana smiled, a small, uncertain smile that glowed against the twilight. Each evening after, Obina returned. He brought her a carved wooden comb, polished smooth as moonlight, and a necklace strung with cowrie shells, tokens of devotion, of a man who loved without reason or fear. Yet with each gift, the world seemed to whisper warnings. A snake's trail appeared near her doorway one night, winding like a message written in sand. The villagers spoke of the river behaving strangely, ripples forming under still skies, fish vanishing without cause. Obina ignored it all. When Adana tried to push him away, saying, "You deserve a woman of your own world," he only stepped closer. "My world is wherever you stand," he said. Her eyes softened, but in their depths, sorrow lived. "Love cannot change what was born in the deep." "Then let the deep learn to love," he whispered back. That night, they sat beside the river in silence, their hands brushing, their reflections trembling together on the water's surface. The moon rose higher, painting silver across her skin, and though beauty surrounded them, a chill clung to the air. The storyteller's voice hums low. "Even the gods pity the heart that loves what it must fear." For when the river smiles at a man, it is not always a promise. Sometimes, it is a warning dressed as a dream. And as the night deepened, The wind carried the scent of rain, though the sky was clear. The moon hung low over the river, its silver light stretching across the dark water like a path to another world. The night hummed with quiet music, the croak of frogs, the rustle of reeds, and somewhere deep within the shadows, the sigh of something ancient. Adana stood by the bank, her bare feet buried in the damp earth, her heart heavy with secrets. The river spirits had begun to visit her dreams again. Their whispers came like cold wind through tall grass. "You walk too far from the water," they warned. "You forget who you are." The curse will awaken. Each time she heard them, her chest tightened with guilt. She wanted to obey. She wanted to return to the calm darkness beneath the river's surface, the world she came from. But when she thought of Obina's laughter, the warmth of his touch, and the fire in his eyes, the call of the spirits faded like mist under the morning sun. "Let them whisper," she murmured to herself. "I am not their slave. I am a woman, not a myth." The night was heavy with silence, the kind that makes even the crickets hold their breath. Mama Ifeoma stirred in her sleep, her wrinkled hands clutching the edge of her mat. Sweat rolled down her face as shadows twisted against the walls. Then came the dream. A serpent rose from the heart of the river, vast, dark and glistening like wet iron. Its eyes blazed red as burning coals, and every breath it took sent ripples of sorrow through the village. It slithered between the huts, wrapping its thick body around laughter, choking songs and leaving grief in its wake. When it turned its gaze toward Mama Ifeoma, she screamed. She woke with a gasp, clutching her chest. "Chineke, the river stirs in anger," she cried. Without wasting time, she tied her wrapper, grabbed her walking stick, and hurried through the sleeping village. The moon followed her like an anxious eye as she called out, "Wake! Wake! The serpent has risen! The serpent has risen!" By the time she reached the baobab grove, the elders were gathering, their faces half lit by the fire. She pointed toward the river, her voice trembling. "The curse is near. I saw its eyes in my dream. The river no longer sleeps." Elder Namdi frowned deeply, his gray beard swaying in the wind. "Mama Ifeoma," he said softly, "dreams cannot touch the living. Go and rest your mind." But her voice rose above the crackling fire. "You think an old woman's dream is nothing? Did not the earth shake before the last flood? Did not the spirits whisper before the sickness came?" A murmur passed through the circle. Some nodded, uneasy. Others shook their heads. Then came the sound, a single clap of thunder across a clear sky. The wind turned cold, and every flame in the grove flickered low. Elder Namdi's eyes darted upward. "Strange," he muttered. "No clouds, yet the heavens speak." That night, as the elders returned to their huts, unease clung to their hearts. Even silence seemed to listen. By the riverbank, Adana knelt beside the glowing water. The moonlight painted her face pale, almost otherworldly. Her reflection trembled in the ripples. And then, slowly, another face appeared beside hers. It was her mother's spirit, rising from beneath the surface, her hair flowing like mist. "Child of the river," she whispered, her voice soft as rain. "You walk toward a curse." Adana's lips quivered. "Mama, I cannot turn back. I love him." The spirit's eyes glistened with sorrow. "Love cannot heal what was bound by the gods. Every step you take away from the water tears your soul in two." Tears streamed down Adana's cheeks. "I only wanted to live as they do, to laugh, to love, to belong." The river shimmered, its waves sighing like grieving ancestors. "Even the river envies the heart of a woman," her mother said gently. "But remember, my child, no one escapes their nature forever." Adana reached out, but the spirit faded into the water's glow. Her sobs echoed through the still night. When dawn came, she was still there, her tears lost in the river's endless song, her fate bound tighter to its depths than ever before, and somewhere beneath the surface, the serpent stirred once more. The water shimmered beneath the moonlight, restless and alive. Adana knelt by the edge, her fingers trembling as ripples spread from her touch. The air grew colder, and from the depths came her mother's voice, soft, echoing, and full of sorrow. "If you choose the mortal, your blood shall remember its oath." Adana's breath caught. The river's surface darkened, and her reflection began to twist. The woman she saw was no longer only flesh. Scales shimmered across her arms, her eyes glowed like wet emeralds, and a serpent's tongue flickered between her lips. "No!" she cried, stumbling backward. I am not." But before she could finish, the reflection shattered into ripples that swallowed her voice. The river rose and fell again, calm as though nothing had happened. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling two heartbeats, one human, one not. Between them, a storm. By morning, the world seemed to shift. Snakes crawled from baskets near her stall, curling lazily over fish and yam as if they guarded her. Children screamed, and their mothers pulled them away. The elders gathered by the well, whispering. "She walks with the mark of the river," one said. "She was warned," another muttered. "The gods never forget." At the blacksmith's hut, Obina's fire hissed as if breathing. His molten iron twisted into shapes no hand could forge, spirals like serpents, faces like masks of water. When one villager mocked Adana, laughing that he would not eat fish from her stall, he awoke that night in fever, his tongue blackened as ash. Fear spread through Ogioma like harmattan dust. The drums of gossip beat louder than truth. Yet Obina's heart did not waver. He went to her that evening, finding her by the river once more. "Let them talk," he said, taking her trembling hands. "Love is stronger than shadows. I see your heart, not your curse." Her voice was faint. "You do not understand the weight of the river, Obina." He smiled sadly. "Then let me carry it with you." His words burned with the fire of youth, the kind that believes it can defy gods, curses, and destiny alike. Days later, the village came alive with the sound of drums. Women wove cloth, dyed in palm oil and red earth, their fingers moving fast as their songs filled the air. Men carved wood into drums that spoke of joy and longing. Smoke from roasted yams and goat meat curled toward the sky, mingling with chants to the ancestors. "Let there be union," they sang. "Let there be peace." But Adana stood apart, her smile brittle like cracked clay under the sun. The laughter of others barely reached her ears. Each beat of the drum echoed through her bones like a warning. Beneath her wrapper, her skin felt colder, as if water moved beneath it. When night came, the village danced. Firelight flickered across painted faces, and the drums spoke of celebration. But beneath the rhythm, Adana heard something else. A whisper. It came from the river. Adana. Her name, carried by water and wind, soft as a mother's lullaby, sharp as a blade. The voice rose and fell with the current, calling her back to where she belonged. She closed her eyes, pressing her hands to her ears, but the sound pulsed through her blood. The heartbeat of the man she loved fought against the pull of the river that owned her soul. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Why must love demand such pain?" The river answered with another whisper, one only she could hear, "Because even love cannot change what was promised to the gods." And as the final drumbeat faded into the night, Adana knew dawn would not come without a price. The drums spoke that night, not to call the spirits, but to remind them they were never far. Each beat rolled through the hearts of men like thunder over dry earth. The village glowed beneath the moon's watchful eyes, firelight dancing on faces painted with joy. But behind the laughter, whispers crept, the kind that moved like snakes through grass. They said the gods had grown restless. They said a mortal heart had stolen what was never meant for flesh. Obina stood tall, his chest proud, his smile wide. Love had blinded him to the shadows that danced at the edge of light. Tonight, He said to the elders, "I marry the woman the heavens themselves have blessed." Old Mama Nkiru shook her head slowly. "Child," she murmured, "when a man hears drums he cannot see, he must ask who beats them." But Obinna only laughed, gripping the gourd of palm wine tighter. "These are drums of joy, not fear," he replied. "Let the gods hear my love, I will not hide it." At the edge of the fire circle, Adana moved like the shimmer of water under moonlight. Her eyes were soft, but deep within them swirled something ancient. The night smelled of dust and palm smoke. Beneath the tall baobab, Mama Ifeoma sat alone, her wrinkled fingers wrapped tightly around her carved wooden staff. The drums still echoed faintly in the distance, but her old heart could not dance to them. Her eyes, clouded yet sharp, searched the darkness as if trying to see what hid behind the laughter of the living. The wind rose softly, swirling the dry leaves around her feet. It carried whispers, not from the village, but from the unseen world. She closed her eyes. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of rain that never came. "Something hides behind this joy," she murmured. "Even the spirits turn their faces away tonight." A low hum vibrated through the ground, making her staff tremble. The baobab's roots seemed to shiver beneath her. Somewhere deep inside, her spirit remembered what her mind wished to forget. That joy can be a mask, and behind every celebration, fate sharpens its blade. She looked toward the dancing lights of the village and sighed. "The ancestors whisper," she said softly. "And when the ancestors whisper, it means the living have forgotten to listen." The wind stilled, leaving only silence, a silence that warned of the darkness soon to come. The night was thick with smoke and the scent of fear. Mama Ifeoma stepped forward, her bare feet pressing into the trembling earth. The villagers watched in silence, their torches flickering like frightened eyes. She held a calabash filled with palm wine and ash, offerings to bridge the world of the living and the spirits. Slowly, she knelt and poured the mixture onto the ground. "Ancestors who sleep beneath our feet," she called, her voice quivering with age and power. "Come forth and see what your children have done." The wind stirred at her words, swirling dust into the air. Flames from nearby torches bent low, bowing as if in obedience. The serpent before her, vast and gleaming, its body coiled like punishment itself, let out a hiss that sounded more like a sob. Its golden scales dimmed under the moonlight. "Speak, daughter of the river," Mama Ifeoma commanded, raising her staff toward the sky. "Speak before the gods take your breath away. Tell us your truth." The air thickened, heavy with unseen power. The villagers felt it, that invisible trembling between earth and heaven. The serpent shuddered, curling tighter in pain and shame. Its body glowed faintly, and from within that trembling form came a whisper, faint at first, like the murmur of water under stone. The ground pulsed. The fire cracked. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. The river trembled beneath the moonlight as Ekanwa's voice rose, deep, haunting, and filled with the weight of creation itself. It rolled across the waters like wind over deep seas. "Love is sacred," she said, her tone echoing through every heart. "But disobedience brings imbalance." Her words were not sharp with anger, but heavy with sorrow. Even the flames seemed to bow, flickering like grieving spirits. The villagers clutched their chests, for in her voice they heard truth, that even the gods, too, weep when harmony between worlds is broken. The goddess's gaze turned toward the trembling serpent. "Adana," she spoke, her voice softer now but firm as thunder wrapped in silk. "You shall dwell between both realms, woman and spirit, joy and sorrow. You will walk with neither fully, and peace shall flee from your heart." The golden serpent lowered her head, her body glowing like dying sunlight. Around her, the river surged and sighed, mourning her destiny. The punishment was not vengeance, it was balance. What had been broken was now made whole again. Obinna fell to his knees, his voice cracking like a drum struck too hard. "Forgive me," he cried, pressing his palms into the dust. "I loved what I could not understand." His tears mixed with the earth, and silence wrapped around the villagers. They watched the young man who had loved beyond reason, realizing that love without wisdom burns brighter than fire and wounds deeper than any blade. The goddess looked upon him with a face that shimmered between grief and grace. "Even in disobedience," she said softly, "love leaves light behind." Her words drifted through the mist, carried by the sound of the rushing river. Let her story remain, not as curse, but as lesson, that the heart holds both shadow and flame. The air hummed with peace, the kind that follows pain's final echo. Adana turned one last time. Her golden eyes met Obina's, filled with everything words could never carry: love, regret, and acceptance. Slowly, she lowered herself into the river. The water rose to meet her, wrapping her like a mother reclaiming her child. For a brief moment, the surface shimmered with gold, then stilled. Only her anklet remained, floating on the calm, glowing faintly in the moonlight. It was all that was left of forbidden love, a silent promise between two worlds. The night held its breath as the river fell silent. Not a single drum, not a whisper, only the sound of hearts awakening. The villagers stood motionless, faces heavy with shame and awe. They remembered how they had mocked her, feared her, called her cursed. Now they understood. Judgment born from ignorance was its own form of darkness. Mama Ifeoma's eyes glistened as she lowered her head. "May we learn," she murmured, her voice trembling like old wind through leaves, "before the spirits must remind us again." The people bowed. For wisdom had spoken, not from books or elders, but from pain itself. In the moons that followed, Obina returned to the riverbank each evening. The forge that once rang with iron now stood cold. He laid palm wine and woven flowers by the water's edge, speaking softly to the wind. "Adana," he would whisper, "the river still listens." He never took another wife, nor sought laughter again. Yet in his silence, there burned something eternal, a love that no curse could kill, a devotion that bridged the space between spirit and man. Under the great baobab, the elders gathered one dawn. The air was thick with memory and humility. They carved new words into wood and placed it at the village gate. "No one shall mock what they do not understand." The message stood not as law, but as wound, a reminder carved by regret, sealed with the tears of those who learned too late. Years passed, and the river Ogioma became sacred. Women came to its banks seeking wisdom. Men left offerings for courage. Children were told never to throw stones into its waters, for the river carried more than fish. It carried memory. And sometimes, when the moon hung full and pale, a golden shimmer would ripple beneath the surface. The elders would whisper, "Look, the spirit of love still breathes there." And the village would fall silent again, in reverence, in awe, and in remembrance. And so, as the flames dim and the drums fall silent, the griots lift their voices, slow, deep, and filled with the weight of ages. "Love can bridge worlds," they chant, "but truth must never be hidden. For when secrets sleep in silence, beauty turns to curse." Their words float through the night air like glowing embers, carried by the wind to every ear that dares to listen. The people nod, some in sorrow, some in peace, for they have learned that love without truth cannot endure. Thus, Adana's story becomes a legend, sung at moonlit gatherings, whispered beside rivers, remembered not for her curse but for her courage. Through her, the village learns. Understanding is the truest form of love. Truest form of love.